What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel. And if you guys are new, welcome. Happy Monday to everybody. I hope the week is starting out good for y'all. We are pushing towards 1,000 subs, so close, about 30 away, and it's all thanks to you guys. So just thank you for the support. It has been crazy, and that's what I'm here for, is to help you guys out for sure. My favorite part of content creation is just making videos that help other Guardians out. So today, in this one, to help you guys out, I do want to go over the raid mods for the Vow of the Disciple. Now, we have 9 of these bad boys, and they don't come from the regular chests. They come from the secret ones that you have to find before that first encounter when you're taking that payload around, and then also during the jumping puzzle, you can get one there as well. If you do need help finding these secret chests, I do have a video on those in the upper corner right now, so feel free to check that out. Now, once you get these bad boys, we have 9 of them available. So when you come to your Legacy and Raid mod page, they are on the second page at the very bottom, and then the third page as well. So first off, to go over, we're going to start with Umbral Sharpening. So with Umbral Sharpening, while you have several stacks of Pervading Darkness, you deal increased weapon damage. Now, there aren't too many possibilities for using this in my personal opinion. Maybe in that very first part when you are pushing the payload around and that darkness is increasing, you can use it there, but besides that, you don't have it in the acquisition encounter. During the caretaker encounter, it's only the people running inside that have it, and you really don't have it once you're doing damage on the boss, which is the most important part. So the third encounter, the relic encounter or exhibition, that one, when you get through the second room and you start actually getting that pervading darkness, that could work inside of that room pretty much only, just because the boss fight does have a little bit of pervading darkness if you get hit by his laser beam attack, or on the final stand it does keep increasing, so it could very slightly help in that moment, but it's really only for the third encounter in my personal opinion, or even for pushing that payload during the very starting encounter, if you will. Second off, we have Umbral Hastening. So while you have several stacks of Pervading Darkness, again, you have increased mobility. Now, this one is definitely good for the caretaker encounter or the third encounter, again, for that relic encounter. During the caretaker, the runners could have this on, so they have that increased mobility when getting the symbols to shoot that obelisk on the outside and then start the DPS phase for the caretaker. Definitely one of the better ones for that. And then also in that third encounter, when you're running in the rooms, killing those Glyphkeepers to look at the symbols, this Umbral Hastening could help you a little bit as well, but there are some better ones, I think, for that third encounter. Next up, we have Shocked Glyphkeeper here. So damaging a Glyphkeeper with a grenade causes your equipped pulse rifle, sidearm, machine gun, and SMG to deal additional damage. Now, this, in my opinion, only comes into play during the acquisition or the exhibition encounter. So the first one where you're running into rooms collecting symbols and shooting the obelisk, or the relic encounter, just because in that you're dealing with Glyphkeepers more often and having to deal with other enemies at the same exact time, compared to in the boss room, you only have those 2 initial Glyphkeepers if you're trading off the buff, right? So it doesn't really last long enough to make it up into the boss damage portion of the final boss fight, and during the caretaker, we don't have any Glyphkeepers to deal with, so it's really, again, only in 2 of the encounters for this Glyphkeeper mod. Fourth off, this might be one of my favorite ones to have on when we're not in our third encounter. So Into the Light, your grenade recharges quicker and deals more damage when you are not under the effects of Pervading Darkness. So once again, as long as you are staying safe within that first encounter, pushing the payload around, you really don't have to worry about darkness increasing, especially if you're standing on the payload, and then after you defeat some enemies, it does go away, so it doesn't really matter as much there. But if you're in the caretaker encounter running around, or even in that first encounter with the acquisition doing the obelisks, you're never really under the Pervading Darkness unless you're a runner during the caretaking. So this right here is a good way to get your grenades back. Definitely in the third encounter with the relics, it's a little less effective just because that Pervading Darkness is always coming on when you're in that encounter, so it's definitely harder to get this to proc in there. And then even in that final encounter, it is super nice to have this because your grenades, once again, you're not getting hit by Pervading Darkness unless you accidentally step into Ralk's laser beam attack or during final stand when he's giving it to you like that. So this one's definitely key for throwing grenades around a little bit faster and dealing a little bit more damage. Next up right here, we have Smoldering Glyphkeeper. So damaging a Glyphkeeper with a grenade causes your equipped hand cannon, shotgun, grenade launcher, or rocket to deal additional damage. Once again, I feel like this is probably only going to be really used in that third encounter during the exhibition, just because we have way more Glyphkeepers to deal with. Maybe in that first encounter, the acquisition, when we're dealing with the obelisks, but that's only for the runners going inside and reading which symbol and which chieftain to destroy. But even at that point, I don't think it's too big of a deal to use any of these except for in the third encounter. Next off, we have the Siphoning Glyphkeeper. So killing a Glyphkeeper grants some grenade, class, and super energy. Once again, this one is probably good for the runners in the first acquisition encounter going in. They can get their grenade, class, and super back faster with having to run around and read those symbols. Definitely, again, in the caretaker, it really doesn't matter because we don't have any Glyphkeepers in there. The third encounter is probably the most important for this one, again, just because we have Glyphkeepers everywhere when we're running from room to room with the relics. And then in the boss room, again, there's really only those 2 Glyphkeepers that pop up right in the very beginning, so it's not that big of a deal to have anything to do with Glyphkeepers on in that final area. Once again, we have a Glyphkeeper mod, the Stagnant Glyphkeeper. So damaging Glyphkeepers with a grenade causes your equipped bow, fusion rifle, sword, and trace rifle to do additional damage. So once again, definitely throwing this on, maybe depending on your weapons, for the acquisition encounter, and then also the exhibition encounter, the obelisk, and the relic encounters. 1 and 3, definitely don't need it in the 2 boss fights. 2 and 4 for sure. Definitely not. Second to last here, we have Umbral Recharge. Well, you have several stacks of Pervading Darkness, your class ability recharges quicker. So this one might be nice just again for maybe in that very first encounter when you're pushing the payload around. But again, the Pervading Darkness goes away. The only other time you're really getting Pervading Darkness consistently is during that third exhibition encounter with the relics. So that would be basically the only time you are running this, because even the runners inside of the caretaker that are going in and collecting the symbols, you have pervasive darkness for not that long, so this might be good for hunters, maybe to get your dodge back and go invisible, but definitely don't need it and not really necessary in my personal opinion, just because you're not getting pervasive darkness that often in this raid. Last but not least, another Glyphkeeper mod, Distorted Glyphkeeper. Damaging a Glyphkeeper with a grenade causes your equipped auto rifles, linear fusions, scout rifles, and sniper rifles to deal additional damage. So once again, this is probably good for your exhibition and your acquisition encounters, just because you're dealing with Glyphkeepers the most during those encounters, so you will be able to have these procced more often than the rest. So to me, these mods are very specific for your job that you will be doing inside of the raid, and most of the time it is going to be better to use some of your combat style mods in Charge with Light or using elemental wells instead of these raid specific mods. But if you are going to pick a couple to use, definitely I like Into the Light, so you can have those grenades back faster and deal a little bit more damage when you don't have pervasive darkness. Umbral Sharpening, so when you do, you have increased weapon damage when pervasive darkness is on. Kind of goes counteractive to this, but if you do happen to be in an area where you're using it like that third encounter, this is super nice to have on. And then also I do a lot of running during the caretaker, so this is super nice for me to have, be a little bit quicker, get my dodge back as my hunter. So those would be kind of the 3 I would pick. I don't really care too much about all of these with dealing damage with the grenades to Glyphkeepers. Maybe this one so my SMG can stun and do a little bit more damage on those overloads when we're in the third encounter. But really, besides that, I'm not going to be using too many of these mods consistently. Like I said, I'll be using other combat mods like taking charge, taking light, stuff like that, and those elemental wells over some of these in the Umbral recharge, especially those Glyphkeeper ones, because there's not many Glyphkeepers to do damage on, and in the long run, like I said, they kind of don't outweigh some of our other combat mods, in my personal opinion. So that's it for this video, going over the raid mods, saying if they are worth it or not. My personal opinion, not really worth it, but definitely suggest getting those secret chests just for that extra little bit of loot, and you never know, they could become meta in the future. Plus you do need the raid armor to throw them on as well, so it's kind of a double negative having that gross armor on. So hopefully, again, this helped you guys out. Choose your mods as you please, but nothing too crazy here to throw on and absolutely blow through the raid or is game changing. Thank you guys again. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.